Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at watching this today. Hey, I just thought, let's start off with Hawkeye basketball last night. Let's talk about that loss, 84 to 79 loss, which was kind of a strange night, I think, against Michigan. This was a must win for Iowa, and they did not get the win. They have 6 games left, and so what does that mean? They'll be favored in 2 of those games, against at home against Northwestern and on the road against Nebraska. Okay. Um, they have Michigan State coming up at home, Ohio State on the road. Ohio State on the road first, and then Michigan State on the road, and then a return trip to Michigan and a return trip to Illinois. Those 4 games, I don't see how Iowa wins them. I'm a fan, guys. I really am. But based on the performance that we have seen this year, Iowa has yet to beat a top tier team in the Big Ten. And top tier would be everybody over them. That would be over them in the standings. Okay. And so they've come close. They've come close. So I don't see this as a win against Ohio State. I don't see Michigan State is Michigan State. If they're going to beat any of those 4 teams that are top tier, it'd be Michigan State. Um, can we get Michigan on the road at their place? I think we proved last night that we can play with those guys. Um, are we going to beat them? My guess is if we couldn't beat them at home with our crowd behind us last night, how are we going to beat them at Michigan with their crowd behind them? Okay. Um, and then we finished the season at Illinois. Again, that was a close game in Iowa City. Okay, but we're going to Illinois. Illinois is playing about as well as everybody else in the league right now. Okay, so this is going to be tough. Okay, at best, unfortunately, Iowa looks like they're probably going 2-4 to finish the season, which would put them at 9-11 in the Big Ten. Okay, and 19 wins overall. All right, so what does that mean for the NCAA tournament? I I think it leaves Iowa on the outside looking in. They said last night on the broadcast that Michigan is currently first 4 out. That's probably where Iowa is now. I know that all the procrastinators have got Iowa between 7th and a 9th, 10th seed, depending on who you talk to and who's doing the guesses. Iowa may have played themselves out of the tournament last night, especially if Michigan wasn't considered a tournament team and Iowa lost at that, and of course they lost to Penn State, not going to be a tournament team. They lost to Rutgers, which people don't have them in the tournament, but I don't understand why. Rutgers has beaten a lot of good Big Ten teams, so I'm not sure why Rutgers is not considered a tournament team, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them in at the end of the year myself. So I think at this point, Iowa probably goes 2-4 to finish the season. Probably an 8th or 9th place finish, depending on what Indiana does to finish the season. And so I'm trying to think. I'm not sure how the Big Ten tournament works. Seems like I'm going to skip over that. Suffice to say, though, Iowa would be playing on the first day probably of the tournament, which would be a 4-day or is it 5-day run now? I can't remember. Okay. So Iowa would have to make a considerable run, I think, at this point if they do finish 2-4, in order to get themselves into the tournament. I don't think they'd have to win the tournament, nor do I think they'd have to get the finals. But I think they definitely would have to win a couple games in the tournament. Otherwise, I think at this point we're looking at an NIT team maybe, and they probably will. I mean, you guys got to remember NCAA after they set their field of 64 plus four. Um, the next teams that they pick are the NIT. They actually pick the NIT teams. And so the NIT no longer has control of their own tournament. The NCAA does. So they'll pick those teams. Um, so yeah, I think at best we're looking at an NIT team. I really do. It's not to say that we aren't fans and we don't want better for our Iowa team, because we do. We do want better. For whatever reason, they're not able to get over the hump. You know, granted, they got blown out in a couple games this year, but most of the games they were right there. You could argue that a referee's call against Rutgers cost Iowa a chance to win the game. You could argue last night that Jabo, who I felt like really took an too early shot. He could have got across that timeline and taken a couple more steps if he was going to shoot that ball. I mean, I think everybody in the building knew that once he got the ball and dribbling down, his full intention was to shoot the three. Honestly, I think he took it too early, but I think he took it too early because if you look at the film, he is being held and grabbed around the waistline. Okay, he is being grabbed. Looks like he's being held, and so at that point he jumps and goes for the three so that he could get the foul call. I'm sure he thought I'm almost positive in his mind he thinks, guy just committed a foul on me. The ref's going to blow the whistle. I need to shoot this. Of course, he's not thinking all that. Obviously, he's just reacting. He's going to shoot it because in his mind he's going to get a foul call, and he wants to make sure he's getting 3 free throws and not just 2 at the line. Okay, so that being said, the ref didn't call it. Do you know why I don't think they called that last night? I don't know how many people actually saw it. I mean, I think the announcers saw it and they mentioned it. But do you think it's because of the brouhaha Iowa made over the end of the Ruck game, which was basically the same thing, but it was us, ticky tack, brush foul against Rutgers, which sent them to the line for three throws, right? Last night, the refs would probably said, "Hey, don't call those ticky tack, inadvertent fouls like that. Don't call it. When the game's on the line. Let the teams decide it." Although it was stupid, really stupid with timeout last night to call a foul on us and have Michigan go down and shoot free throws with 0.03 seconds left on the clock. Honestly, I would have. The game was won by Michigan at that point. They had the ball. Just let it go. Just let it go, refs. I mean, I think that was just rubbing salt in the wounds last night. And it just makes you wonder, do these refs have something out for Fran McCaffrey? I don't know. I'm not going to accuse them of that. It just seems like it was a strange night by the refs. It wasn't a perfect night by the refs, but the refs did call it both ways last night. But I do believe that ticky-tack foul did not get called against Jordan last night just because of the brouhaha over the Rutger game. Okay, so that's why. That's why we didn't get that call, guys. I know I was standing there thinking, "Oh, that's why they're over there. They're going to see if a foul was committed to make sure it was a real foul." I had no idea they were looking at the foul at the other, down closer to the end where we committed a foul, which we did. But it was just stupid to call it. The game was over and the game was won by Michigan. It's like calling the foul after the fact. Okay, and so that's why I believe, and I don't really hear anybody complaining today about the foul that was missed on Jordan. I know that I've seen a couple of people mention that he may have been fouled, and I'm pretty sure he was fouled too because they did replay it a few times and he definitely was grabbed. down around the waistline. If you watch the replay, you can see him get grabbed around the waistline just as he shoots the ball. Okay, so neither here nor there. Game is over. Michigan wins 84-79, which the final score should have been 82-79, but the refs allowed 2 more free throws for Michigan, which I still think is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. Were they obligated to call it? I guess they must have felt like they were. If you're gonna let that foul go on against Jabo, then you had to let that other foul go last night too. I think it was against Joe T. It might have been against Joe T. I don't remember now. Okay, so that's just for summarizing what I think about Iowa's chances. I believe they're NIT bound now. I believe they played themselves out last night. I think the only way at this point, and I just don't see how, guys, I really don't. I don't see how Iowa's going to get on a run, but they're going to have to get on a run. They're going to have to upset an Ohio State. They're going to have to get Michigan State at home for sure. If they can get Michigan State at home plus Northwestern, which is an improving team, guys, they're not going to be easy to beat. Fortunately, we have them in Iowa City. And then make sure we get Nebraska on the road. Don't let that be their final game of the year because they know they're not going anywhere after the Big Ten tournament. So that could get us to 3-3. Okay, I think, like I said, out of Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois, and Michigan State, I think the most winnable game might be Michigan State, but they have Tom Izzo, and they are Michigan State. So stranger things have happened with those games. Okay, and tell me something, guys. Is there anybody in the league besides Fran McCaffrey and Tom Izzo, that complain, yell, and scream and jump the refs the entire game as much as Tom Izzo does and Fran McCaffrey does? So why is Izzo always given a pass, never slapped with a technical? But McCaffrey, he gets his technicals throughout the course of the year. But Izzo's doing the same thing. He's doing the exact same thing. He's working the refs. He's getting mad at him. He's yelling at him. And so why does Izzo get away with it? Somebody tell me that. I'd really like to know. Okay, so that's the reason. But they got the Izzo factor, and that's why I believe that beating Michigan State is tough. It's been a tough win for Iowa over the years to get Michigan State. They get it every now and then, but they can't get it consistently. Kind of like in football, There for a while, we used to beat Michigan State in football quite regularly. Then it came to the point where we couldn't beat them at all until last year. Their COVID year. That was the only year we got them so far. But that's neither here nor there. This is about the basketball talk. So, can Iowa beat Ohio State this weekend at Ohio State? I don't think they can. Now, if you listen to the procrastinators, they feel that this is a good matchup for Iowa. No, last night was a great matchup for Iowa. If we couldn't beat Michigan with a team that has a defense that's as bad as Iowa's, and we couldn't get, let's face it, free throw shooting cost that game last night. Okay, the stupid dunks that these guys tried to take last night when the ball's in the air and they're trying to catch it and dunk it, and then they hit the rim, and the ball bounces out to not a teammate but to the other team. Should have been lay-in. You should need to grab that ball and put it in for a lay-in. Okay, that's all you got to do. How many of those? 3 or 4 of those last night between Patrick McCaffrey and Keegan Murray and Chris Murray. Guys, they lay those in, we win the game. If Keegan just hits a couple of more free throws, 3 or 4 more free throws last night. They said that he shot 40% free throws last night or something. I don't know if he was that bad, but maybe I heard wrong. Okay. But let's say he hits half of the missed free throws he has, and we make a couple more of those bunnies that should have been lay-ins instead of slam dunks that bounced away from us and cost us little bunny points. Iowa wins the game last night. We probably win it going away because Michigan will be following us at the end of the game, trying to get the ball back and trying to make us miss free throws. Okay, that's what should have happened last night. But we missed those. They missed the easy bunnies, and they free throw shooting was abysmal last night. Okay, they need to, if they're supposed to be the best free throw shooting team in the league at 70% or 80%, then they need to hit that. Last night I don't know what they hit. Probably in the 60s. I forgot to check that before I came on air here. Okay, they probably hit in the 60s somewhere. Okay, so meanwhile, Michigan is not missing anything. At one point, they were hitting 75%. That's because we weren't playing much defense, I don't think. Plus, we were turning the ball over. Iowa uncharacteristically turned the ball over more than they normally do. Okay, so there's another point. There's points off of turnovers that cost Iowa the game. Excuse me. So, um, but yeah, I don't want to spell doom and gloom for our Hawkeyes. I don't want to try to be negative. Um, but I do believe that as of last night, they played themselves out of the tournament. But the good news is that they can get on a run and play defense with the way we know they're capable of playing defense, like they did at the end of the game last night. I mean, that last 3 minutes was like a clinic. It's like, wow, why weren't you guys doing that the entire second half? You play like that the entire second half, you would have been winning that game going away. You know? So hopefully when they return to Michigan, they just play like that the entire game. I don't know why Iowa picks and chooses when they play like that. I really don't. I used to like it when Tom Davis, behind or ahead, he put the full court press on because he wanted to get up and he wanted to get up big. It wasn't a tactic he used only when they were behind. Iowa seems to only do it when they're behind and they're running out of time. Okay. They've got the guys. They got the guard play. They got those quick guards that can do it. Granted, they're not the world's best offensive weapons. They need to be. They need to be more offensive minded. But they're not. But they are good defensive weapons. You know. And so, it was kind of cool to see. You don't see it every game, but it was Perkins, Ulis, and Joe T all in the game at the same time at the end there playing defense. That was kind of cool to see because I believe they probably are our best overall defensive players. They really are. So I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. Last night, people were talking about how Peyton Stanford was starting to come around, and last night he kind of reverted back to what he was. Granted, Jabo really had a hard time finding his shot last night. I watched, as the point guard. The reason to put him at the point guard was so that he could try to create his own shot and decide when he can get it off because he best knows when he feels that he's in a position to make it. And honestly, he could not break away. And some of the screens they set for him, they were right on it. I mean, I believe that people think that the key to beating this team is guarding Jabo, and they might be right. Um, it's not guarding Keegan. When Jabo has a good game, Iowa wins. When Jabo has a average to poor game, they lose. And I would say, what did he get? Like 7 or 8 points last night. I'm not sure about that. So I would call that an average game for Jabo. Not a great game, not a bad game. He didn't have a super bad game, but it would be nice to see him hitting more than just 2 3-pointers that he hit last night. So, but yeah. So I'm just going to move on for that. Okay, we already know how I feel about the last night's game and what it means going forward. Let's talk about Ken O'Keefe real quick. Stepping down as QB coach. Um, I do know that Kirk Ferentz said in a news conference a couple of weeks ago that they were not going to change anything on offense. Okay. But they were going to look at offense to see what they could do to make it, I don't know how to say it, better or more efficient. Maybe that was the word. And then all of a sudden, after that news conference, Ken O'Keefe is stepping away as QB coach. So are they blaming the QB problems on Ken O'Keefe? What do you guys think? Or is this a deflection from what might be the real problem, which people think is Brian Ferentz, which I don't. I don't believe Brian Ferentz is the real problem, guys. Um, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The real problem this year was the offensive line. Last year, the 2020 season during the COVID shortened season, our running game was spectacular. Um, the running game was spectacular because we had a nice, experienced offensive line. We weren't rebuilding the whole line with youth. And that even helped Spencer Petras last year. It helped him in the 2020 season to get better as the season goes on because he had time to grow into the offense. He had time to figure it out. He had time for his receivers. I mean, at the end of the season, he was even hitting his two main targets that everybody thought was going to have a huge year. Smith, Marset, and Smith. Um, they didn't have the huge years we all thought because they weren't the real targets for him at the beginning of the year, but they were more so at the end of the season, and I think that helped him. So um, I still don't believe that the problem lied in the QB play. I think it relied. I think because of the O line not doing its job, it forced Spencer to make some bad decisions. So if you want to say, yeah, that was bad QB play, yeah, it probably was then. I think he was forced into some bad decisions that he probably wouldn't have made if he had a little more time. Okay. And I know people get discouraged with that. Okay. But so what's this mean for the with Ken O'Keefe going away? Was he made the scapegoat, or is the problem really the QB situation and nothing else? And we need to do a better job of training our QB. Um, Here's what I think. I think one, um, both Batia and um, Petrus have both said that the Iowa offense is very, very complicated. Okay. And so they said that there's not a lot of time to work on your mechanics because you're working on studying the playbook, running the plays, running them in practice, and things like that. So mechanics take a back door. So, do we need to find a way to simplify the offense a little bit for these guys so that they have time to work on their mechanics? Would bringing in a Tony, well, I can't say his name, but Raccio, would that help having the QB work on his mechanics during the season or off season with him, working with him, help the QB situation get better so that these guys can learn the offense and run the offense more efficiently? You know, honestly, I don't know how complicated other people's offenses are. Um, Michigan's, which is mainly run the ball, more of like an Iowa thing, run as much as you can, throw when you need to. Um, uh, Ohio State, though, um, I think they're mainly a pass, weren't they? Weren't they more pass and a little bit of run when they needed to? But they're high scoring offense. They did very well this year. Um, Purdue has the capability of being a high scoring offense, but I don't think they are as much as they used to be. Um, who else in the league can score points? Well, anyway, getting around that. So that's what we need. We need to score. We need to just up our scoring average. If we could have scored 30 points a game this year on the average, I think we would have lost just one game, maybe two. I can't remember. But it would have been good enough to win the bowl game. I think, honestly, I think the only game, if we could have scored 30 points a game, I think the only game that Iowa wouldn't have won was against Michigan in the Big Ten title game. I believe they held everybody else to 25 and under points. So that right there just tells you that we got to get the offense more efficiently. It needs to come around for next year, and we know that. But so who are the replacements for at QB, coach? I've heard Drew Tate's name thrown around. This Tony Ratchey is being a lot of people are throwing that out there. Is that how you say his name? Recchi or Razzini? Razzini maybe. Chuck Long has been thrown out there too. While we're at it, if we're going to bring Chuck Long in as a quarterback coach, let's make him our offensive coordinator too. He was offensive coordinator at Oklahoma during some of their best years. I mean, not that Oklahoma didn't have a lot of great years without him there, but they had good years while he was there too. The offense ran really good, and he was the quarterback coach, I believe, and offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. So if Chuck Long would agree to come on and do that, I think that's what we should do. In all honesty, that would be my vote. I don't know if Chuck Long would do that anymore. He's got his TV gig going. He runs the Iowa Olympic Games or whatever they call the Iowa Games. And I don't know what else he's got in the fire. But, he might be happy doing what he's doing. But yeah. But wouldn't it be nice if you give Chuck Long free reign, bring him in as offensive coordinator, and he could be the QB coach as well? Iowa would save some money on that. And hiring a new QB coach, because I believe in my mind he could get the job done. I really do. Nothing against Brian Ferentz. Right now, Brian Ferentz is taking a lot of heat for an ugly offense this year. But remember, he was also the mastermind of the 2020 season, shortened COVID season, that averaged over 30 points. I believe it was 31 points a game. Something Iowa hadn't done in years. It had been years since they'd done that. So, and the other thing you got to talk about when you talk about Brian is, as I don't believe he has free reign to do what he wants to do on offense. Okay. I believe he's got some innovative ideas, most of which I don't think his dad's letting him run. I bet it when they started the Wildcat in 2020. I bet it took an arm and a leg for Kirk to agree to do that. And then after he saw some success, yeah, Kirk says, "Yeah, keep running it. It's working." Okay. I think the first time they used it this year, we lost yards. How many times did we see the Wildcat after that? Not very many, guys. Not many at all. And that also tells you that Brian knew that what Brian already knew, what everybody else knew, that our offensive line sucks or sucked this year. I'm sorry, guys. I believe they'll be better this year. They can't help but be better after work out of the off season in the weight room and eating a little more food at the dietary table. And then getting a little more workout in spring practice and more summer workouts, they'll get better. They'll get bigger. They'll get better. They're more experienced, and they'll be a little quicker. The game will slow down for them a little bit more. And they've got some other talent waiting in the wings too. That should provide a big spark too. So while I would expect to see some of the same people on the O-line this year, I would also expect to see some new faces, because I believe they got some help coming. They got some redshirt freshmen and David Davikoff. So that's going to help. Okay. But let's get back to the QB question. Is that with Ken O'Keefe leaving and bringing somebody else in as a QB coach, are we going to see our quarterbacks improvement? Are we going to see them do the things they need to do to win games? Okay. And I think we saw this year that there isn't a whole lot of difference between Padilla and Petrus. Early on, Padilla was, because he could run out of trouble. Um, Petrus couldn't run out of trouble, guys. He had back issues and leg issues that during those 3 weeks of rest, when he was resting for 3 weeks, not playing, that got better. You noticed that when he came back into the game for the first time, to bail out Padilla, that he could run. He actually run. He could run out of the pocket. He did actually try to run out of trouble a little bit. So that just showed that whatever issues were bothering him early in the season were his legs. You know, uh, that must have been sore and hurt more than we thought. So honestly, whoever wins the job, my hat's off to him. Whoever wins it, even if a lot of people want Joey Labeas. Labeas, is that how you say his name? A lot of people think that he could challenge for the job. He's going to have to really, really outshine the other two because the other two have starting experience and game time experience. And honestly, I think it's Petrus's job to lose at this point. Okay, I don't think it's anybody else's job, and it's just Petrus's to lose. He can lose it by injury. He could lose it by being very ineffective, making poor decisions. But it's his job going forward, and I'm pretty sure I think the bowl game proved that. The bowl game absolutely proved that that's what they want. Um, so even though Padilla's in school right now, if he doesn't come out of spring as the number one QB, I believe he's going to transfer. I really do. I believe he's out of here too. Um, and if Padilla comes out as number one and Petrus comes out as number two, then Petrus will transfer. I don't see a world where both of them will coexist on the same team, even though they're best buddies. And I think I heard roommates. I don't see a world where they both coexist on the same team when they both feel like they can start. Um, Even Padilla's training coach that he works out with was making rumblings that Iowa made a bad decision by pulling him off of the starting for in favor of Petrus at the end of the season. So that being said, you know, I don't know what to expect with the Kendall Keith stepping down. I really don't. I think he was asked to step away. I really do because they're honoring his contract and they're keeping him on in an off-field position. So I don't know what he's doing. Probably just getting paid for doing nothing. I don't know how that works. Um, or maybe give advice to the next people in line, or keep advice for his job is to advise Brian Ferentz on the offense. I don't know, but also I believe they said that 4 of the top 5 QBs were trained under. Ken O'Keefe trained them. He was the QB coach because remember when he was offensive coordinator, he was also the QB coach at the same time. So I think that's where I read. I think I read that somewhere where So where people are trying to say that maybe he's not getting the job done, maybe he is, guys. Maybe he is. Remember, Spencer Petras is number 2 in categories that Chuck Long is number 1 in, and everybody loves Chuck Long. Okay, I'm going to try to end this because that's the only really things I wanted to talk about where Iowa basketball goes after the Michigan loss last night, and what does it mean for Iowa QB situation um, with Kendall Keith stepping down. And I think what you guys learned from my rambling is I don't know what it means for Iowa QB situation. I don't, until we know who the new QB coach is, if there is one indeed going to be hired, we don't know what that means. So we don't know. I do believe that for whatever reason is they've asked. My personal belief. I'm not saying I have any inside information because I don't. That Ken O'Keefe was asked to step aside. Um, you know, and I believe that because I think they want a fresh start at QB. And honestly, I don't know what that does. I think they've got one quarterback in the 23 class, and they got another one or 2 of them in the 22 class coming in. All of them coming in with the idea that Ken O'Keefe was going to be their coach. So I don't know what that does for the commits that are signed right now, and I don't know what that means for the verbal commit that they have for 23, who's by the way being trained by Tony Rassini. Okay. So maybe he comes to Iowa. Maybe he's not. I mean, he's got quite the racket going there. He'd have to quit working with all those other QBs that he's working with right now if he comes to Iowa, because he'd have to be Iowa's exclusive QB coach. Unless, of course, they may have an arrangement where he can continue to run his QB camp business outside. So that's something to think about too when everybody's pushing for him, is that he does have a private business where he trains quarterback coaches. He's just not doing it. He's not doing it on the side for free, guys. He's making money doing this, and so unless he makes an agreement with Iowa that he gets to continue doing that in the off season, which I think that would be a conflict of interest. That's what I want to say, a conflict of interest. So I don't see him coming. As much as people are speculating he would be the perfect hire, I don't see him coming and giving up his life that he does, because he's probably making so much better money than he would make as a QB coach at Iowa, running his business. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed it. Please share this video, get more views out there. Please subscribe, follow me on this page if you want more Hawkeye content. I don't try to do this every day. Maybe I should. Maybe I'll get more followers if I bug you guys enough. But yeah, let's do this, guys. I'll continue to do more if you want to hear more, and I'll try. I'll just try to keep my points simply and just keep them on tact. And I got a little long-winded today, and so um, that's all. I'm just going to end this. So thanks for listening, guys, and see you next time I come online. Bye.